I'd been dating my girlfriend for 2 months and been over to her house a considerable amount of times, but tonight was different. Like any 16-year-old guy, I'd walk over hot coals to have sex with my girlfriend anytime her parents weren't home. But nighttime in her house was different. Something was always off, if you know what I mean. I found it especially troubling going upstairs to the bathroom at night, always as if I was being watched or followed closely. "I'll be home a little later than I thought. Just go inside. My mom's cool with it," she said. Her mom always liked me, so when I knocked, she let me right in. I was just leaving for a while to meet my fiancé for dinner. "You'll have the run of the place until Jamie gets home. Just don't steal anything." Her mom shot me a cheeky grin, winked, and then walked out the door. I retired to the living room and started watching Seinfeld on Hulu when I needed to pee. I hated those stairs, especially it being dark, and even more so being alone. I tried turning on the staircase lights. "Why don't your entry lights or stair lights work?" Jamie replied with a, "They do, but only for a day, tops. We don't know why. Creep meter broken." I literally sprinted upstairs, did my business, and exited the bathroom. And this is when it happened. Her dog Maxwell was growling at something down at the other end of the hall, though it didn't sound like a Pomeranian, more like a fucking Rottweiler. A very angry, gravelly growl. "Max, it's just me," I shouted, before nearly tumbling back down 15 steps. Max always sleeps up there this time of night. I was relieved when I heard the car door slam in the driveway. Jamie was finally home. I'd never let her know how truly scared I was, how truly scared her house made me. Despite this, I rented Sinister because it just fit the mood I was in, and I waited for her to come into the house to begin playback, and that's when she came walking through the door. Her back was to me as she was shutting the door, but the sentence was already on its way out of my mouth. "Babe, your damn dog is acting really fucking..." Then, she turned to face me, and I began falling inside. The hairs all over my body stood at attention. In her arms was Maxwell. She took him to her cousin's house to play with the kids. "What were you saying about Max?" she asked. "Oh, nothing. I didn't realize he was with you." "So what was it?" "Nothing. Let's just go watch TV." Though I didn't go near those stairs again, I kept seeing shadowy movements out of my peripheral, right near the front door. But when I looked, it stopped. Ever since, she's been coming to my house instead. At first because I asked her to, but then it was at her request, because Maxwell died in his sleep at 13 years old, and since that day, she's repeatedly said something to me that chills my blood. Since I was 3 years old, I used to think it was Maxwell growling at me in the middle of the night, just outside my bedroom door. But now he's dead, and it's still happening. Only now, it's coming from my closet. My darling wife, God rest her soul, had a lifelong fear of being buried alive. Taphophobia, they call it. So far as I could tell, Her condition stemmed from a traumatic childhood incident, although in 37 years of marriage, she never once told me the full story. Her fear was so pervasive, she actually left explicit instructions to be followed in the event of her demise. From the moment she was declared dead, I was to wait 14 days before burying her and spend the final night by her side in the funeral parlor. Unfortunately, after her accident, my father-in-law kicked up a huge stink over point number 1. Delaying the burial is delaying my grief, he said. Reluctantly, I agreed to bring the date forward, if only to shut him up. Point 2 was, of course, absolutely nuts. I was afraid even asking to spend a night with my dead wife would put me on some sort of federal watch list. And so, with a heavy heart, I did not act per either of my wife's final wishes. The funeral came and went. Tears were shed, kind words exchanged. I was still grieving for what I'd lost, but I took comfort in knowing the worst of it was behind me. Then the nightmare started. Each night I saw my wife trapped inside a casket, ribbons of blood opening across her knuckles as she pounded against the lid. I wrote it off as guilt, as my subconscious punishing me for betraying her final wishes. The dreams kept getting worse. Soon I was having them whilst awake. I'd open the fridge or pantry door, only to see my wife, eyes wide, screaming my name, her hands appearing as though they'd been dipped in red paint. Doubt crept into the back of my mind. Was it possible she hadn't actually died? Could she have been in some sort of deep coma? After almost a week without sleep, I couldn't endure the guilt any longer. I snuck a shovel and flashlight into the graveyard, waiting for the cover of darkness, then found my wife's grave and started digging. I dug for hours, my sweat-soaked shirt clinging to my back. The soil was hard and unforgiving. My joints burned and ached. Just when I thought I couldn't dig for a moment longer, I struck something solid. I caught my second wind, throwing aside mounds of dirt at a pace men half my age would struggle to match. With a deep breath, I grabbed the lid of the coffin and pulled with all of my might. It opened up, revealing scratch marks etched along the inside. I froze, my heartbeat skyrocketing. Slowly, I lowered my gaze. There lay my wife, a look of horror etched upon her face. Her hands were held out in front of her, frozen in place by rigor mortis, caked with dried blood. And in place of fingertips, she had fragments of bone jutting out at awkward angles. I was 15. My family and I were in Fort Myers, Florida, and there was a terrible storm on the horizon, riding in on black clouds. The waves had begun crashing like a watery bulldozer, and the sea was becoming choppy. I was boogie boarding, and I went out for one last wave. Something very cold bumped into my legs. Seconds later, I went under. In this moment, I was a boiled crab getting my leg ripped by a hungry restaurant patron, simultaneously screaming and inhaling copious amounts of salt water. I could feel something of great strength tugging me along as the sand I clawed at began to fall away from my fingertips. Something tangible and icy was wrapped around my ankle. This is the moment I realized amidst the struggle that it wasn't a riptide. Something had a hold of my leg, and it was dragging me further and further from land. When I couldn't hold my breath any longer, my fight or flight kicked in. Instead of swimming away from whatever it was, I swam along with it. My head broke above the surface one time as I projectile vomited salt and took one more deep inhale, and yet I was dragged down again. Now, facing the horizon, I felt the same snug, icy grip, only now on my forearm, as it continued to pull. I'd assumed I was being pulled by a giant squid, but then I opened my eyes, and what I saw was nightmarish. I was leering directly into the eyes of a little boy with dark blue lips, a pale bluish tint to his skin, and his jaw hanging open like the corpse of a drowning victim. His bony fingers were latched to my forearms while gazing into my soul with dead, lifeless white eyes. This boy was miraculously swimming backwards while simultaneously pulling me to my death. Utterly frightening was the vision of his legs paddling eerily sluggish behind him while swimming in the wrong direction. I pushed my feet against his chest and shot myself away and out of his grasp. The last thing I saw was the boy reaching for my legs while receding down into the black abyss, smiling at me with a toothless grin on the way down. I shuddered when I heard a humming of what sounded like a sort of demonic lullaby after he disappeared, emanating from all around me in echoes. Once my head broke the surface and I began taking giant breaths, my eyes adjusted and I discovered that I was maybe only 100 yards from the shore. I swam as hard and as fast as I could, but fighting exhaustion, I figured I wouldn't make it. Until my feet touched down on the sandbar, the waves violently crashing around me and thunder rumbling overhead. I took a minute to breathe. I told my parents what happened, that it was a boy, a very evil boy who pulled me under. My dad says sometimes in stressful situations, you'll imagine things that aren't there. He never went against his conviction that I imagined it, but I saw it in his face the next morning. Pure dread in his eyes when I showed him the freezer burns on my wrists and ankles in the shape of fingers. Somehow, I believe that many of those who have drowned from undertows were really drowned by something else. They just aren't alive to tell us about it.